Hi friends, I'm Denita Inez with Desueño Dance, and I have more to talk about. Teaching philosophy! So this is part 2. Here are some things that I actually really do during my classes to encourage people to have a really good time in class, but also the instructional time is valued and balanced. Balanced it being the primary word. Lately, I've had a few new private lessons come to me who have been follows in particular, who have been voicing concerns about some classes that they've taken where they haven't felt like an integrated partner in the dance. And I was like, hold on, friends. Well, that might just be something that, your teacher is growing into or not aware of. And how we talk about these things is really important. Within the dance, social dancing in particular, there are often 2 roles. And those roles are traditionally a lead role and the follow role. And oftentimes when people think about it, they're like, well, the word lead means I'm in charge. And the word follow means you're doing what the lead wants to do. And that's a way to look at it. But for me personally, the way I like to view those roles is one role is crafting movement and sending signals to the other person. Now, the other person's role is the person who deciphers the movement and is able to translate. So they're doing 2 different jobs, 2 different roles. One role is not more important than the other because one role cannot exist without the other. So they're interdependent. They're doing different things. So I don't judge them on the same rubric ever in terms of what it is that they're doing. And so I think the first thing to do is to make sure that as a teacher, I'm giving equal weight to those roles, because I want to make sure that my students also respect those roles and realize that without one, the other cannot be happening, right? So if you're talking in terms of lead, follow, saying a lead is not going to be dancing this dance by themselves, yes, unless they're practicing in their shadow follow, have a shadow follow for rehearsal or for practice purposes. But if you're out social dancing, you're going to go ask someone who is in the role of a follow to dance. And then that is 2 people of different jobs working together. Same thing if you're a follow. Yes, you're not necessarily going to be social dancing unless you're doing footwork. Yay, footwork. By yourself, you might be asking a person who has the traditional leads role to dance. And then you 2 are working together for one social dance to occur, if that makes sense. And what I usually like to think about in terms of how I communicate that to my students is to say, with a machine, yes, there's one part of the machine that has its responsibilities, and only by adding the other machine can you get that machine to run fully. If you only run this part of the machine, you're not going to get your desired output. It's not going to happen. Same thing. You only run the other side of the machine, it's not going to work. So putting it together is what will move you towards your desired output, which to me, hopefully is a beautiful, fun social dance that is safe and that is enjoyable for both parties involved. It seems like something that should be straightforward, but getting to that point where both people are being respected in the dance and are being taken care of in the dance in a way is really important. So some things that I do during class is to make sure that I'm giving equal opportunity to dancers of both roles to dance and to learn. And by that I mean, if there's footwork involved that you're learning, to make sure that that footwork is broken down for both parties of the dance. So if I need to stop and break down what the lead is doing, I need to make sure that I'm doing the inverse, which is breaking down what the follow role is doing in terms of their footwork. Because for them to work together, usually they have different footwork. The footwork's not the same if the person, sending a signal for a right turn, they might not be actually doing that right turn. So the follow is then interpreting that signal and doing different footwork from that lead role. So they're having that interpretation moment, but also doing something visually different and logistically different from what the lead is doing. So making sure that you are balanced in both demoing and teaching both roles and both parts of that machine, and then putting it together, seeing and demonstrating how it works together as a team. I like that balance in a class, because then you're going to craft a student who is starting to understand how the machine works. And I like to put this together using the example of a mechanic. So if you take your car to a mechanic, your hope is that the mechanic can work on your whole car and to see it as a full piece. If you take your car to a mechanic and your mechanic says, I can only work on the front of your car, or the mechanic says, I can only work on your engine, but I don't know how your engine works in relationship to any other part of the car, your struts, your balance, the framework, that's going to be a very tough job for that one mechanic to work on your whole car, because they're not able to understand the big picture, the full picture of how your car works and how your car moves. Same thing. If you have a mechanic who only is going to work on your tires and your framework, and they're like, but I'm not going to touch your engine or anything about that system that connects to it, that's going to be a very, very hard time for you to get a full picture of what you need to do with that car. Same thing in social dance. You want to make sure that you're giving time and attention to both entities involved in the dance, so that way you can get a better dance. I know that there are teachers out there that do put a lot of importance on both parts of the dance, and that is an amazing way that you're going to get really competent dancers, respectful dancers, and dancers that treat each other as valued members of the dance. I think that is a great way for the dance scene to go. So that's one of the things that I like to make sure that I'm doing personally in my classes, and that teaching with respect to both parts is really important moving forward. So yes, please teach a balanced class. Make sure that you're going to classes that are balanced, that give you something for both people who are learning this dance, because that's going to be the way that you move forward. And as a student, you're going to understand more if you get a full picture of what that machine, what that social dance is being crafted, right? How you're crafting it. You turn from being the mechanic that only knows one piece of the dance to a mechanic that has a full picture of the dance and how things work from both perspectives. That will make you a stronger dancer and will give you more options later, especially if you're trying to become an advanced dancer. You're going to see the bigger picture much easier than if you had only kind of looked at one thing. Because if something breaks in that one thing, it's a little hard to figure out what it was that happened, versus if you have a full picture and you're like, oh, something's not working, you can take a different perspective. You can take a wider look at what might have happened or what needed to happen. So that's one way in that I make sure that in my teaching philosophy, I'm giving respect to both parties in the dance, both the crafter of movement and the interpreter of movement. But also, I want to make sure that I'm communicating to my students that there are two different ways of viewing a dance, right? And how we balance that. And the first way is how a dance feels. the feeling of a dance is, to me, really important because it shows respect, it shows kindness, it shows flow of energy. It can show a lot of things about a person. It goes back to an interview Mikhail Baryshnikov had, famous male ballet dancer, and he basically says, have a man dance for me and I can see who he is, right? I can tell who that person is. And man, female, whoever entity is dancing, you communicate a lot with your body non-verbally. That can be seen, that can be felt. So having a dance that feels good is really, to me, it's up there in terms of an important skill to have, an important skill to develop in your social dancing, versus having a dance that looks good. And I'll tell you a little bit why those two things can be different. Feel of a dance can have really good energy. It can be using the correct amount of tension and force and moving parts that create a safe environment for both the crafter of movement and the interpreter of movement. I've had dances that may not have been with really hard moves, but have felt really, really good. And that's oftentimes the person I'm going to go back to dance with. That felt amazing. It felt like dancing on a cloud. Yes. Transcendent. It was, a beautiful experience. Versus a dance that looks good. Now, there are dances that are aesthetically pleasing when you look at them, but sometimes when you ask that dancer afterwards, well, how was that dance? You're looking at them and they're like, no, I would not do that again, or I don't want that experience again. But it might have looked beautiful or looked visually appealing. But when you have a dance that looks good, but doesn't necessarily feels good, you're kind of at odds with the social dance. One of the reasons that social dance is so powerful, which is the connection between both parties for that moment, that dance, that 3-minute dance, however long the dance is, where you're making sure to respect your partner. So in teaching, I want to always make sure that you emphasize that there is also the feel of the dance. How should this move feel? How should the movement be received? To make sure you're not adding too much force or energy, or even in terms of like how we speak about the movements. How do I make my partner do this versus what should I do so that my partner is able to do this? Like even the ways in which we speak about movement is important to the dynamic of the dance. Because if I say the words like push your partner into this, it might invoke a different image to that person than if I say allow your partner to do this, or rotate your own body to create this reaction in your teammate, and vice versa. So the way in which we speak about the movement, the dance, is important. Now, moving forward, you can have a dance that feels good, might not look that impressive, but to me, that feels good dance is also most likely going to be a safer dance. And that is preferable for your longevity of your dance career. But we get to my favorite part. When you bridge a dance that feels good and a dance that looks good and put it together. Now that is the creme de la creme in terms of preference. You want a dance that's fluid and smooth and interconnected, and a dance wherein both parties feel good as well. The energy is right, the tension is great, and the communication level going between each person, each partner is smooth and connected, because we're dealing with a dance that's nonverbal. I've had two of my favorite dance experiences ever happen with people who didn't share the same language as me. And that was fine. It was about having that tension, that energy, and that connection that allowed us to have a really good dance experience in those moments. And to me, that's where you're going to make sure that you're connecting as people, as humans, going together. And that's important, to recognize that this is a person that I am dancing with. I do want to make sure that I'm treating them with respect, and not just respect of them as a person, but respect of their body. So I'm not doing things that could potentially injure them, or dancing in a way that disregards their agency, is what I like to think of. I want to make sure that I am treating them with a sense of respect and a sense of dignity in a way. So I think that is another part of my teaching philosophy, where I don't want you to just have a cool looking dance. I mean, that's cool. That's awesome. I love that move. That's cool. But I also want to make sure that that move feels good for both people involved. Because if you're out dancing and you're doing things, thinking, I look so cool, but your partner is thinking, this feels horrible, or this feels uncomfortable, then your end result is most likely that that second person who said this feels uncomfortable is not going to go back to you for another dance. And that is not where we want to be as a community. We want to be making sure that people are feeling comfortable and moving into a space where they are safe and that they feel respected, and we are giving and receiving beautiful dances. That is, to me, a great place to be, and where I want my students to be. If my students go dancing, I want the people who are there to be like, oh, this person feels amazing. And I feel like we look great together. We're dancing well. And not cosmetically look great together. I mean, in terms of the movements are being done correctly in a way that is connected, shows respect, and is safe. That is a beautiful dance. And that motivates people to ask them more. They're like, oh, I really enjoyed that. It felt good. I felt light. It looked great to me. And they go back and get another dance. That is a good place to be in terms of, I'm going to do the grid, in terms of like a dance that feels good. People will come back to a dance that feels good. Yeah. And versus a dance that looks good but doesn't feel good, people rarely go back for that dance. They're like, oh, great, that was a lot of moves, fancy moves, but if they don't feel good at the same time, you're rarely going to go back and get that repeat dance. But if you can go to that sweet spot where you have a dance that feels good and a dance that looks good or is aesthetically pleasing to that person, you can kind of get that sweet spot where, that dance was a safe dance. That dance was smooth. And I felt like that person respected me and respected my space and the agency of my body. Boom. That's where you want to be. I think that is like, whew. And your growth towards there may be different. And it may not be a graphical line. It might be a swirl spectrum of how it is that we reach to where we are. A lot of times I feel as though people get into dance and they're like, this is the question. When will I be good? Or when will I be my idea of good? Yeah, right? Because that person's idea of good may be different from mine, may be different from anyone else's. And it usually is. But that is a question that it's very hard to answer as an instructor. I'm like, it depends a lot on you. It depends on your view, your output of the dance, how much you practice, and how you treat the people that you're interacting with, in terms of tension, balance, and those things. And they get better if you work on them, and if you are intentional about how you work on them. But that's part of my teaching philosophy. Part 2, yay! I think it helps the dance community if we make sure that we're not only giving respect to both roles, agency to both roles, and letting people know, like, hey, if someone is taking away that agency for any reason, that it's okay to not go back to that person for a dance. It's okay to seek out people who are treating you with respect, who give good feeling dances, safe feeling dances. And that goes both ways, as a crafter of the dance or as an interpreter of the dance. So make sure that you are growing with your own agency. And if you're a teacher out there, I really do encourage you to check in with your students to make sure that you are giving a balanced experience to both parties involved that emphasizes the respect in the dance as you move through your classes. To me, that is another way that we protect our dance space, protect that dance village, to make sure that the people who join our villages feel empowered, feel safe, and feel as if they can be a part of this dance village forever. So sending you all lots of love, lots of warm feelings, and encouraging you to do as much as you can to make sure that the social dance world is growing in a way that is positive, that is supportive, and that helps make the world a better place, even if it's for just those few friends who are joining in the dance world. But I really do think that there is spillover in how we treat each other, how we speak to each other, even how we treat each other non-verbally. That is important. So we can do things that really do help make even one person's day a little better. So again, I'm Denita Inez with Desueño Dance, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you on the dance floor.